All right. The code that we're going to have for this video can be accessed here on my Replit, or you can just go ahead and look in the description of the video and get the link there. We are going to create a program that allows us to create if statements, and it will ask if the user wants to add, multiply, or quit the program, and then the user will put in a letter uh, to decide. So A, B, or C, we'll go with that for now, to decide which one of those options they want. So let's take a look at if statements and how they're structured in the Java programming language before we actually get to coding one. Now, there's a couple different ways to create if statements, but I'm going to use one that is just good in all contexts. So if you look here, I have the syntax already written down. An if statement starts with the keyword if, then evaluates a set of conditions in between the parentheses or within the parameters. And then if that statement is true, it'll look inside the code between the opening and closing brace of the if statement. So there could be multiple statements inside here to execute. There could be just one. So let's take a look at this in UML diagram here. So if the condition evaluates to true, then it goes into where the statements are, which would be here in the code. If that condition evaluates the false, then it skips that and moves on to the next code in sequence. We're going to come back to this diagram in a couple of minutes because I think it'll be useful for us to look at. But let's go ahead for a moment and move to the code, which would be right here in the Replit. Again, this is the link that I showed you at the beginning of the video, or you can find at the description inside this video. So if you want to use this in a Replit, all you got to do is fork your own example. So you can just go ahead and start coding it, and now it's your code. Or you could just copy and paste this and put this in Eclipse or whatever IDE you might be using. As you can see, this code is pretty simple. Now I'm going to assume a couple things. One, that you know how to create scanner objects and how to get input. And I'm going to assume that you already understand how to access the API for Java, and you understand some of the API or the methods found in the string class for Java. If you don't know those, this video might be a little bit confusing, but you should still be able to get along just fine, though it would help if you knew those. So let's go ahead, and before we get into all that stuff, let's go ahead and take a look. So we create a scanner object named scan, and we assign it a new object that allows for inputs. And then this line of code here just prompts the user, hey, for addition, enter 1, for multiplication, enter 2, or to enter 3. Let's go ahead and change that actually. Let's say for multiplication, enter A. I'm sorry, for addition, enter A. For multiplication, enter B. And to quit, actually, let's just do Q for quit. All right, so let's go ahead and run this real quick. And when we do, we're going to see down here or wherever your console window is, the output for addition, enter A, multiplication B, and then enter, or to exit or to quit, enter Q. As you can see in Replit, the red exits has shown, so nothing's really going to happen in this code no matter what we enter. So it'll just say something about a bash command. All right, so our program has already executed in its totality. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to add an if statement. Well, I'm going to say, well, actually, first I should probably get some input from the user. So let's create a string object. Let's name it inputs, and let's assign it whatever the person scans in for the next line. So this will get the user input. And then let's create an if statement that evaluates that inputs. So if inputs dot now, before we finish this off, I'm going to try to run a method on the string object known as input. So let me take a look at the string class API, and I'm going to use equals ignore case, and it will compare it to another string. I'm going to just literally put it in. So if input equals ignore case, A, we're going to open brace and closing brace. I will just put out a systemout.println that will go ahead and just let us know that they chose addition. All right, so now let's test this. I'm going to run it. And then it prompts me for addition, enter A, multiplication, enter B, and to quit Q. So I will go ahead and I will enter A. And now the code outputs you chose addition. Well, let's take a look at that. And then of course it exits. So let's take a look at that. I created an if statement that evaluates whether inputs is equal to A, and that could be lowercase a or uppercase A. And then if that's true, it will execute the code between the braces. Let's go ahead and run an example where it should not work. I'm going to enter in the value of B. Now, B does not equal A, so it should ignore this line of code and just go straight to exit. Let's go ahead and put in B. And of course, it does exit. So I said I was going to go back to this. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. So in this case, the condition I'm checking for is the user input the value A. If it's true, then we'll execute what's in there. For example, that system.out.println that says you chose addition. If it's not true, for example, the user enters in the letter B, it will skip anything in that if conditions braces and move to the next line. In this case, it just exits the code. So let's go back to the replit. Let's test this a little further. I'm going to put after the if statement a message that says program ended. All right. And then if we run that after the if statement and before the main method closes, if we run that, we'll now see output that will tell us that the program has ended no matter what. So if I put in a B, program ended because there is no case for B right now. And then if I put in A, we will see that it will read or it'll print out you chose addition as it did before. And then it will say program ended. So again, looking back at this, if the condition is true, it will execute what's in the braces of the if condition, which was you chose addition, and then it will carry on to the next line of sequence, which is why it printed out this program has ended. However, when I put in B, it did not print out you chose addition. It skipped that line of code, that whole if statement, if you will, and moved to the next line of code, which was the program has ended. All right, let's go a little bit further and add another if statement. We're going to add another if statement before the program ended code, and we will now say if the inputs that the user inputs equals ignore case, string literal B. I'm going to comment this, open if2, close if2. And I will put a system.out.println in here that says you chose multiplication. All right, so looking at the code, I have if the user inputs A, print this out. If the user prints this or chooses this, print that out. All right, so let's go ahead and run it. And once we get a prompt here, we'll test for B now to see if that works. And you'll see that it says you chose multiplication, program ended. So it's exactly what it should have been doing. Let's go ahead and put the last one for Q. This time, if you haven't noticed, both of these ifs are very similar. One checks if it's A and prints out a message. The other one checks if it's B and then prints out a message. Well, this time I'm just going to go ahead and copy this so I don't have to type as much. And then I'm going to go ahead and I will say for Q, let me just change these comments real quick. This is my third if, so I'll go ahead and I'll document that. And I'm actually not going to put anything here. And I'm going to leave that blank. So if the user chooses Q, I'm just going to have it print out this end piece here alone. All right, so let's go ahead and run that code. And then if I put in Q, it'll just print out code ended. And if I put in A, it'll print out you chose addition, program ended. All right, maybe a little bit weird that it just reads program ended. So let me put in here, let me cut this out and put it inside the Q only. And then run the code again. This time I'll put in A, says you chose addition, and we can tell that the program exited, though we didn't get any prompt saying that. And then we will go ahead and we will put in the value Q, and it just says program ended, like we exited. All right, so that's your basics for ifs. The next video I create, we'll go ahead and we'll see how to put this in a while loop so that it continuously runs until the user says Q for quit.